A New York misadventure. It was one of those mornings in New York City when everything seemed to be going wrong before the day even started. Bill wasn't a morning person, but he was trying to be optimistic. It was Saturday, he had the day off work, and he had big plans. A trip to the local cafe for a coffee, some time to stroll through the park, maybe even a visit to his favorite barber for a fresh cut. Life was good, right? Wrong. It began with the rain. A gentle drizzle turned into a downpour the moment Bill stepped outside of his apartment. He'd barely had time to check the weather app on his phone, which, of course, didn't warn him about the thunderstorm. His umbrella, which he had for years, decided this was the exact moment it would break. The metal ribs twisted in defiance, like a medieval torture device, and Bill watched helplessly as it flipped inside out in a pathetic attempt at protecting him from the downpour. "I can't catch a break," Bill muttered to himself, sogging through the streets, his pants clinging to his legs as though the city itself was trying to swallow him whole. Undeterred by the rain, he pressed on. The next stop was the local cafe for a warm cup of coffee, his usual Saturday ritual. He slid into a booth, grateful for the warmth. He pulled out his phone and checked the scores of the big game from the night before. His beloved sports team, the Brooklyn Cyclones, had lost, again. Not just a little loss, but a humiliating, no chance in hell, embarrassing defeat. Bill stared at the screen, the bitterness of the defeat settling in his chest like an old friend who always overstayed their welcome. "Great," he muttered, sinking deeper into the booth, hoping to disappear. "At least the coffee's hot." Just as Bill was about to take a sip of his drink, his stomach gave an alarming rumble. The kind of rumble that told him he might need to find a restroom, and fast. He hadn't realized it, but the coffee was already making its way through his system at full speed. "I'll be fine," Bill reassured himself. "It's New York. There's a public restroom on every corner." He stood up, braving the downpour once again. The nearest public restroom was in a park a few blocks away, so he hustled over. By the time he got there, the rain had let up, but he was already drenched and in a bit of a panic. His internal alarm was going off like a siren. But, of course, the restroom was locked. The sign on the door read, "Out of order." "Of course it is." Bill groaned, his frustration bubbling over. He knew there was a portable toilet just around the corner. They weren't glamorous, but they were reliable when you were desperate. He approached the blue box, relieved to see it unoccupied. It was a little claustrophobic inside, but at least it was clean, well, as clean as a porta-potty could be. Just as Bill settled in, trying to relax and focus on the task at hand, the worst possible thing happened. The door, which had never been properly latched, swung open. "No!" Bill yelled, scrambling to close it, but it was too late. A pair of joggers had just rounded the corner and were now laughing uncontrollably. Bill was trapped. His hands pressed against the flimsy plastic door as he futilely tried to shut it while the joggers pointed and mocked him from the outside. "Don't worry, buddy, we've all been there," one of them called out, still laughing. Bill could feel his face burning. He wanted to shout something back, but no words came. He just let out an exasperated sigh and sat there, alone with his defeat. After what felt like an eternity, the door finally shut, and Bill emerged, red-faced and humiliated. The joggers were long gone, but the embarrassment lingered. Determined to salvage what was left of his dignity, Bill decided it was time to get his haircut. His barber, Tony, was a legend in the neighborhood. He'd been cutting hair in the same spot for decades. Bill had an appointment, and he was looking forward to the comforting routine of a clean cut and a chat about the latest game. Bill arrived at the barbershop, his clothes still damp from the rain. The door was locked. Maybe he's just taking a quick break, Bill thought, knocking on the window. A small sign on the door caught his eye. "Closed for the weekend. Family emergency." "What?" Bill bellowed in disbelief. "Not today. Not now." He stood there, staring at the sign, willing it to change, but it remained the same. Tony was out of town, and Bill's already wrecked day couldn't get any worse. Or so he thought. As he turned to leave, his phone buzzed again. He had received an update on the game, the one that had already ruined his morning. Breaking news: Cyclones lose again. Worst season in history. Bill let out a defeated laugh, glancing up at the sky. The clouds were parting, but it didn't seem to matter anymore. His coffee was cold, his hair was a mess, and his favorite team was on a losing streak so bad it might as well have been cursed. He was soaked from head to toe, trapped in a porta potty, and his barber had abandoned him. The city seemed to be conspiring against him. But then, something unexpected happened. Bill smiled. Not a big, happy smile, but a small, almost ironic one. Maybe it wasn't all bad. After all, he was in New York, the greatest city in the world, and he'd made it through a truly ridiculous day. It was just life, right? Messy, unpredictable, and absolutely absurd. He shrugged, stuffed his hands in his pockets, and decided to make the best of it. So, Bill walked through the streets, looking up at the buildings towering over him, and he laughed. It wasn't the most ideal Saturday, but at least it was a story. And in New York, everyone had a story. Even the ones where everything goes wrong. Maybe tomorrow will be better, he said to himself as he stepped into the next downpour. And who knows? Maybe he'd find a new barber.